This is your world. This is theirs. This is the life you lead. This is the life they choose.
God's country.
What does it take to heed the call of the mountains?
Dancing with danger on an hourly basis.
If I get stuck here, I'm gonna die.
Grit.
And I decided that while I was young, that I would go out and explore and live some of my dreams.
Guts.
There's something bigger than us out there, and he lives in the bush.
And blood. These are the untold stories of those who dare to live on their own terms. This is Mountain Men. Escape to the wild. The American wilderness. Its high peaks and rugged valleys, dense forests, and big sky are the backbone of a nation. Forged on self-reliance and determination, today's mountain men are the last of their kind, a breed apart, who choose to live hard and live free. Like Eustace Conway, who settled in the Blue Ridge Mountains nearly 40 years ago.
I think from the time I drew my first breath, I was destined to live outside. I just felt deeply called from an internal voice. Maybe you might call it the voice of God telling me that this is an important thing to do.
But before Eustace escapes to the wild, his childhood in Gastonia, North Carolina is typical of an American boy coming of age in the 1960s.
I grew up in the suburbs. My parents had 4 children, and I was the oldest one.
It's here, in this house on the outskirts of Charlotte, where Eustace first finds his calling.
When I was 4 years old, my mom would let me just go for many hours in the forest. I always felt happiest being out in nature. By the time I was 5, I was going miles and miles away from home just by myself. Other parents would come knock on our door. "Miss Conway, do you realize your child is out in the woods and he's been out there for 4 hours?" She'd say, "Yes."
Eustace inherits a love of nature from his maternal grandfather, C. Walton Johnson, who the family calls Chief.
My grandfather was a huge influence. He showed a lot of models about challenging yourself with the ways of nature.
Chief Johnson was an outdoorsman and the founder of Camp Sequoia, where he taught wilderness skills and values to children for more than 50 years.
And he just encouraged each one of his campers to listen to that inner voice and to realize their potential. Nowadays, so often, we're told, "You can't do that. You can't do that." My grandfather's teaching was, "You can do this."
But as Eustace grows older, his desire to live in nature clashes with his father's expectations about career and family.
He and I did not get along too well. My dad absolutely loved nature, but it didn't make sense to him that I would just go wild, and live out there forever. My dad put me down a lot because it was so challenging in the home. That was probably one inspiration for me to go out into the forest. So I said, "See you later," and I headed out in the forest, and that's where I've been ever since.
In 1978, Eustace strikes out on his own for good. He's just turned 17, and his life will never be the same.
I'd say having a teepee was about one of the most important things that I ever had. It allowed me to live for free, I live close to nature. And that natural lifestyle taught me more than about anything else ever has.
Surviving 12 months in the rugged Blue Ridge Mountains is a rite of passage. But Eustace isn't ready to put down roots yet. He's determined to take on a bigger adventure.
Covering lots of miles, going in an unconventional way, dancing with danger on an hourly basis. I wanted to have some of that action too.
Isolated from the outside world by the northern Rockies, Montana's Yak Valley is as remote as it gets in the lower 48. An unspoiled place that Tom Orr has called home for nearly 40 years.
I think I was born to be a mountain man. And as long as I can stay here, I'll be a mountain man. I kind of live in the past. I was born 100 years too late, or maybe 200 years too late.
Tom's been a master tanner and trapper for so long, it seems like he was born into it. But he didn't grow up in the mountains. He had to be called to them.
This whole lifestyle started for me back in Illinois when I was just a child. And I don't know if I had any pull over it or not, or whether it just scooped me up and took me.
Tom grows up in the country outside Rockford, Illinois. The youngest son of a man with a passion for an age-old American tradition.
My father worked for a Wild West show back in the last of the old Wild West show days. My dad was a real horseman, and he passed that on to my brother and I.
You heard of free-range chickens. Well, we were free-range kids. We had a lot of freedom.
My brother and I turned 7 years old. My father taught us how to trick ride, which is doing tricks on the back of a running horse. My grandpa told my dad, "You're gonna kill them boys." We managed to live through it all.
Years of trick riding transformed Tom into a daredevil. And by the time he's 15, he finds his next adrenaline rush, the rodeo.
My mother drove me to the edge of town, dropped me off with my bull rope and my rigging bag, and I hitchhiked to Ohio, and I hired on to ride bulls and bucket horses. My mother knew how important it was to me, so she turned me loose. She said she had all the confidence in the world in me.
Confidence that pays off. Tom works his way up the ranks of the International Rodeo Association, and by the early 1960s, he's a champion rider.
Tom Orr is no stranger to bronc riding. He's been among the top 10 to win the world championship for the last 10 years. Almost caught him on the gate, but Tom's going on with it. He's working with him, going from one end of the horse to the other with those feet, using them as free arm in time with the horse also.
Wild hog going it was. It was wild and woolly and all the excitement. I loved it. It's almost like coming home.
Tom is one of pro rodeo's Ironmen by the late 1960s. With a career spanning 26 years and showing no signs of slowing down.
Tom was good enough that he made it to the finals a whole bunch of times. He was right up there with the best of them.
But sooner or later, every rider has his date with destiny. For Tom, it's Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1970.
It all started right here in this spot, just like this. His name was Woolly Booger. He was a big black Brangus bull.
Aboard the 2,000-pound animal in the bucking chute, Tom uses an old bull rider's trick to beef up his grip.
I usually dropped a finger in my bull rope, which meant that your hand was locked into the rope. The moment the chute opened, there was a big eruption. He threw his head up and threw my head down, and we whacked heads right out of the chutes. I was knocked out and unconscious.
It takes a tough breed to survive as a mountain man, and they don't come any tougher than Tom Orr. Before he's called to the mountains, Tom is a champion bull rider, ranked among the top 10 in the world. But in 1970, at the age of 35, he meets his match. A whack to the head leaves Tom unconscious and powerless. His limp body is trapped at the mercy of a 1-ton bucking beast.
My hand is still in the middle of the bull's back, so now my legs and stuff are underneath his hind legs. He's bucking and stepping on me quite hard. That ride probably was the closest time that I ever came to dying in the rodeo arena.
Tom's girlfriend, 23-year-old Nancy Weaver, witnesses the accident from the stands.
And there he laid in a limp pile in the rodeo arena, you know. And it's like, holy smokes, what's going on here, you know? Pretty soon here comes the stretcher in, and they haul him off in the ambulance, and it's like, you know, all the things you dread.
The ordeal continues for 2 minutes before Tom is finally cut loose. He's rushed to the hospital, suffering a severe concussion and bruising from head to toe. He's unconscious for 3 hours.
And the next day I went in, got into it, see him, and his face was so swollen. His eye was swollen purple.
Surprisingly, Woolly Bugger fares even worse.
They told me that old Woolly Bugger, he died 2 weeks later. I think I gave him a concussion too.
Never one to let an injury keep him down, Tom is back in the bucking chute less than a month after his brush with death. But something has changed.
The kids started beating me, the young guys, the young guns, the new, strong young guns coming on. It was time for me to quit, you know, so I did.
Tom retires from the rodeo in 1981, and at the age of 41, makes a decision that will change his life forever.
Nancy and I would come out to Montana in the summertime and go rodeoing out here. It was always neat to come out here because of the country and all the Wild West. So we loaded everything we had in the back of an old 69 GMC pickup truck and headed for Montana.
We were in love. Whatever he was doing, I wanted to be right there with him and supporting him.
We had no idea what we were getting into or how I was going to make a living out here, but I just had a feeling that, by God, I can do it. I can get it done.
The Alaskan frontier is one of the most unforgiving places on Earth. But there's nowhere Marty Meierotto would rather be.
All right, this is where it all started for me back here. The first place I got into the bush, started trapping, just like coming home. God's country.
It's here, deep in the White Mountains, that Marty has his first encounter with the Alaskan bush. The year is 1987, and the 27-year-old aspiring trapper is 200 miles from the nearest town and half a continent away from home.
I was raised in northern Wisconsin, just south of Superior, in a little bug fart of a place called Foxborough. It was dairy farm country.
It's also Packer country. And like many people in town, Marty's father works as a cutter at a meatpacking plant to support his wife and 4 children.
My dad, as a young man, he got married and he had to go to work. He started raising a family right away, but his big dream was always going to Alaska.
Tom Meierotto and his 3 sons spend all their free time in the outdoors.
Deer hunting with his boys was sacred.
A family ritual that becomes a calling.
From day one, when the first time my dad took me out on his little walking trap line, I knew right away that that's what I was gonna do forever.
But living off the land isn't an option in Wisconsin. And when he graduates high school, Marty expects to get the same job as everyone else, working the line at the meatpacking plant.
I remember I asked my dad if he could put in a word for me where he worked, and he said, nope, you're not going that path.
Marty's brother Jeff, who everybody calls Stitch, offers an alternative.
Stitch came home from college, and he said, when I graduate, I'm going to Alaska. And I instantly said, I'm coming with you. Let's go. When we told my dad we were going to Alaska, he just thought that was the cat's meow.
When they set out for the Great White North, Marty has never even seen a mountain before. But the boys load up in a '76 Ford pickup they named Blue Max and hit the road with less than $300 in their pockets.
The open road and the unknown and challenges, and we're headed to Alaska.
And after 1,000 miles, it finally happens. Driving head-on to the Rockies, Marty spots a mountain for the first time. He is 25 years old.
We had to stop. It was pretty awe-inspiring.
1 week later, another momentous first. Across the Yukon River, he arrives in Alaska.
I remember thinking, oh, this is just what I was hoping it would look like.
But it's 1985, and life in Alaska is rough. Making matters worse, the brothers are completely broke.
It was tough getting going. We had to take whatever was there.
Marty pushes a mop as a school janitor to make ends meet, then works as a deckhand on a commercial fishing boat, saving up his money to buy a trap line. It takes 2 years of grueling work, but in 1987, Marty and Stitch buy their first trap line, sight unseen, in the remote White Mountains.
When you buy a trap line, you're not buying land. You're basically buying some equipment and paying somebody not to go there. The one we found was as far out in the bush as we could get.
The brothers are so broke they must barter with the pilot to fly them out to their new trap line. A deal that includes a round-trip pickup in 2 months' time.
I mean, we literally didn't have enough money to pay for the flight to come and get us. He said, pay me when you can. Pay me when you sell fur.
Marty and Stitch touch down in one of the most dangerous landscapes on Earth, with little more than their rifles and the clothes on their backs. Their survival depends entirely on their own skills.
It was pretty tough. If you didn't kill something that day, you didn't have meat to eat.
And sometimes a little luck.
I looked up ahead down the trail and I saw a moose, and he stopped and gave me the old dirty eye, because he didn't know what I was. We were probably the first humans he ever saw.
It's Marty's first ever encounter with a moose, but he doesn't hesitate.
Shot for his lungs. I hit him, and he went down, and then I walked up to him. It was, wow, I didn't know they were this big. They're big. There's probably 500 pounds of meat on a big bull moose.
The first kill is a critical rite of passage for anyone looking to survive in the bush.
That was a big deal. It was almost like, okay, everything's gonna be all right now. We've got a winter supply of meat.
Marty and Stitch make it safely to the end of their first Alaskan winter.
Here in that plane, thinking, holy cow, here he comes. And then I started thinking, boy, I just might pull this off.
They don't strike it rich, but trap enough fur to break even, proving they have what it takes to survive here.
After that winter, we had just enough money to pay for the pilot, get some supplies, and drink a few beers, and then we were pretty much back where we started, broke. But we were headed back out to the woods, right where I belong.
In northwest Montana, Tom and Nancy Orr are no strangers to hard work. Trapping, hunting, and tanning the old-fashioned way. Living off the land, it's a life they've built from the ground up, like modern-day pioneers.
When we first moved up here, there wasn't any jobs for a person to make a living up here. You had to either have money or come up with some way to make it, you know? And then it was a cold winter. The first winter that we spent here was really, really cold. And we got to wondering, wow, did we move to the wrong place here or something?
Determined to succeed, Tom relies on his ingenuity to see them through the early years.
I was a trapper before I left Illinois. In fact, the old pickup truck that we drove out here in was paid for by the muskrats that I had caught back in Illinois before we left.
Today, Tom is an expert tanner. But 40 years ago, he has no experience turning fur into profit.
All right, we about got this.
Until a chance discovery changes everything.
The first material that I ever had that told about doing this was a book that I bought in Billings years and years ago. It was an Indian store. We just stopped and went in, and there it was, in black and white. Told you how the Indians brain tanned. Wow, that turned me on right there. So I just picked up that $3 book and took it home.
$3.
$3.
The secrets revealed inside the simple 16-page booklet spark an opportunity for Tom and Nancy to turn a dying art into a homespun business. All they need are the right buyers.
Black powder rendezvous, they called them. Lots of money. Lots of money.
Eustace Conway has spent a lifetime developing the expertise he needs to survive and thrive in the rugged Blue Ridge Mountains. But when he first sets out on his own 40 years ago at the age of 17, he has nothing but his wits and determination to succeed.
When I moved out, I had to develop those skills pretty quickly. Either get it figured out or die. It was a really high, exciting time. And I decided that while I was young, that I would go out and explore and live some of my dreams.
With just 1 year of training under his belt, Eustace sets his sights on an epic undertaking, a 1,200-mile canoe trek down the Mississippi River.
That was my first big journey. Most of all, it was just a big cathartic push for freedom. It's like, wow, this is huge. I started in St. Louis, right on the edge of the water there. And first thing I knew, I was paddling under the first big bridge, and the stream was carrying me, and I was paddling hard, and it was really exciting. But pretty soon, I realized that I had never even seen anything as powerful as the Mississippi River.
The Mississippi is a beast of a river, known for its maze-like channels and deadly currents. Determined to live by a primitive code, Eustace is making his journey in an 1800s-style canoe powered only by his own strength. No match for the river's treacherous waters.
I heard like a sound of a big waterfall. I was like, what's that noise? And I realized, holy.
Up ahead and fast approaching, a powerful whirlpool is swallowing everything in its path.
I could see huge trees just swirling around and around and disappearing, gobbled up by the water, not even to pop up. I said, I don't want to go under like that. Once you go under, you don't come back up. It will suck you down and disappear you forever.
Eustace narrowly escapes.
That is when I started having a lot of respect for that river.
The brush with danger is a brutal lesson for the rookie riverman. Adapt or die.
You wake up in the morning, you canoe all day, and you go to bed at night, and you're further down the river. But what the most amazing thing is that you're further along in your own development as a human being.
It takes 3 weeks to journey from St. Louis to New Orleans, but now 18 years old, Eustace isn't finished taking on the wild.
If I can canoe down the Mississippi, I can do anything. And so it's that internal process that's the real making of a man.
Eustace Conway has lived in the mountains for almost 40 years. And in that time, he's learned the most important rule of survival. Never take your next meal for granted.
I've been hungry before. It gives me a keen appreciation for food. Oh man, I see a couple. Okay, I think I can shoot that one.
When you're starving, food is life, food is precious. We should appreciate it all the time. In fact, through the rest of my whole life, I've appreciated it more because I've been hungry.
It's a lesson he learned the hard way as a young man. Bursting with confidence after conquering the Mississippi, Eustace ups the ante. On a whim, he sets out on an even more ambitious adventure. But this time, a 19-year-old Eustace is in over his head.
Hiking the Appalachian Trail just came about one day, just like the drop of a hammer. I hadn't even thought about it. And then a day later, I was heading up to Maine to start. I didn't know what people normally took on the trail. I didn't know when you started. Didn't even know which direction people went.
The Appalachian Trail cuts south along the mountain range from northern Maine to Georgia. When Eustace sets out in May of 1981, the mountains are still covered in snowpack. It's a rookie mistake.
People that knew that I shouldn't be there were just like they were seeing a ghost. I was too early.
It takes an average of 6 months to hike the 2,200-mile trail. But with the unexpected winter conditions, Eustace runs out of food in a matter of days.
There wasn't much food out there in the wintertime. You know, the grains hadn't even started coming up. It was just dead winter. After I'd been going for hundreds and hundreds of miles, walking every day without food, pretty soon you could see my ribs. I was so hungry.
14 days pass without a single meal, and then an opportunity.
I saw a little movement. It's like, what's that? It's like, it's a porcupine. I'll eat it.
Without a hunting rifle, Eustace must improvise if he wants to survive.
And I looked around, and I saw a dead spruce tree, and I made a club. By this time, when I looked back, that porcupine was running again, running hard for a tree. And it started climbing up the tree, and I waited until it was just about waist level. So between my club and the tree, it just smashed that skull. It was gone. It was all a learning curve, but I figured out how to skin it. By that time, I was even more hungry, thinking, here, I'm gonna have some food. And after a few minutes of watching it cook, it's like, to hell with this. And I just cut off a leg and started eating it raw. So I ate 2 legs before the rest of it cooked. And I was hungry.
Eustace narrowly avoids starvation, and the weather finally clears. He conquers the Appalachian Trail in a blistering 138 days and learns a valuable lesson in the process. Never go unprepared into the wild.
I never have and don't think I ever will lose an appreciation for that food.
Back in the Great White North, Marty and his brother Stitch have 6 winters under their belts by the late 1980s and are now full-fledged Alaskan trappers.
Stitch and I worked hard out there on the trap line for a few years. Then I met Dominique, and that kind of changed things.
Marty spends his winters on the line, but in the off-season, He's dating the woman who would one day become his wife. Dominique works in the mess hall of the Alaska Fire Service, and after 2 years together, Marty makes a proposition.
I said, hey, you know, let's go spend the winter in the bush. You come with me. I can't believe it. She decided to come out with me.
He wanted to make sure that that was really what I wanted to do, and did I realize once you're there, you're there.
In the winter of 1995, the couple sets off from Marty's remote outpost in the White Mountains.
But when that plane dropped you off and he flew away, that was the end of it. You weren't talking to anybody else. You weren't getting a message out. No one knew nothing until that plane came back.
But what starts as an adventure soon takes a dangerous turn. After 2 weeks on the line, Dominique falls seriously ill.
At first, it was no big deal, and she got sicker and sicker, and pretty soon she was bad.
I gradually became more sick and realized that I had a real bad kidney infection.
200 miles from the nearest doctor, and 2 months before their scheduled flight out of the bush, Marty and Dominique have only one lifeline, a short-range aviation radio with a single set of batteries.
I grabbed the handheld radio, and then I'd start calling Mayday, Mayday. Meanwhile, the battery's getting weaker and weaker, and she's getting sicker and sicker. I was worried she's not gonna make it.
The sub-zero Alaskan wilderness is one of the deadliest places on Earth. So remote and rugged that those who dare to tread here must adapt to survive. It's a lesson Marty learns early as an inexperienced trapper facing a deadly emergency. It's the depths of winter, 1995, and his girlfriend Dominique is severely ill. They're 200 miles from help. Armed with just a shortwave radio, Marty makes a distress call.
Mayday, Mayday, anybody out there? And there was never anybody out there.
Marty signals for 3 days straight, draining the batteries with every call.
Then out of the blue, I heard an engine. I heard an airplane engine. Then I could see that it was coming up the river.
But the pilot isn't aware of Marty's distress.
I knew a local guy isn't going to be monitoring the emergency channel. He's probably going to be monitoring a common radio frequency. So I started hitting those and calling, and finally, all of a sudden I heard a voice. Is this Marty?
The pilot is one of Marty's fur buyers.
I just remember this great weight lifted off me. He came in and said, I got this, and we got out of there.
Dominique is rescued in the nick of time, but the ordeal is a wake-up call for the young trapper.
When Dominique got sick, I thought, I can't go to the bush anymore. But then I started thinking, no, you need to be a pilot. You need to fly. It's just like everything. You got to depend on yourself. As soon as you start trying to depend on somebody else, it can bite you.
Now a seasoned bush pilot, Marty rarely goes anywhere that his plane doesn't take him.
For a guy who's addicted to the wilderness and the bush, it's monumental.
More than a decade after setting out on his own, the kid from Wisconsin has learned his hard lessons and become a true mountain man. An achievement that Marty finally got to share with the man who inspired it all, his dad.
I'm really happy that I was able to bring him up here, because I know that was his dream. I've stood next to him when he shot his first caribou and he shot his first moose. I think he got his dream later in life, but maybe it was sweeter for him because he was with his sons. Being in the bush, you're definitely a part of something bigger than you are. whatever you want to call it, there's something bigger than us out there. And he lives in the bush.
Every mountain man lives or dies by his skills. And Eustace Conway always goes to extreme lengths to learn the ways of the wild. By the age of 34, he's lived alone in a teepee for 17 years, canoed halfway down the mighty Mississippi, and hiked all 2,200 miles of the Appalachian Trail. But he still has his sights set on an even greater challenge, a journey more ambitious than anything he's dreamed of before.
Very similar to the Appalachian Trail, it came out of a fierce belief that I could succeed even in the face of complete impossibility.
The mission, ride across the entire continental U.S. on horseback.
That's the way you get stuff done. You set your mind to it and decide you're going to do it, and then you do it.
Eustace asks his brother Judson, who was cowboying in Wyoming, to come along.
I said, Judson, how would you like to ride a horse across America? And he said, like, no.
But Eustace persists. And in January 1996, the brothers saddle up and set out from Jekyll Island, Georgia, bound for the Pacific.
Judson and I, we called ourselves the Long Riders when we were crossing the country. That was a long ride. We figured that'd be a good name for it and for us and what we were doing. People would see us riding through their town and they thought we were making a movie or something. One guy said, that looks real. It's like, no, we are real. It's not a movie. We're doing this. Heading west, trotting along, day after day. I just wanted to learn about what it was like to live on a horse. Mile after mile, hundreds of miles after hundreds of miles, day after day, from daylight till dark. Be as one with the horse.
"4 months and 2,500 miles later, Eustace and Judson reached San Diego.
It was really a surreal moment. Just like, let's slow this down. It's only ever going to happen once. And so I just slowed my horse down, and Judson and I just rode right into the surf. We just held up our hands in celebration. We made it. We did the whole thing, and we stood there together in the surf, soaking it up.
At Land's End in California, Eustace runs out of America to cross. He's finally ready to sink roots back home in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where he'll use the skills and lessons learned from each adventure to build his home. The place Eustace calls Turtle Island is also in part a tribute to his grandfather.
My grandfather was a huge influence. He really shaped my understanding of what is possible.
My grandfather really enjoyed celebrating the old ways and getting people with their hands on to old skills, and I've spent my life teaching the same thing and have been able to reach a lot of people and show and keep alive those traditional ways.
It all ties together. It all is bound into one story. All those journeys, all those hardships helped make it possible to create this place, Turtle Island. Turtle Island is largely an accumulation of all of my dreams and all of my life's work. I'm doing something I believe in hour by hour, day by day, and haven't let up yet.
By the early 1990s, Tom Orr is determined to carve out a life in Montana, but he's struggling to make a living. He finds his calling as a trapper and makes some headway learning the ancient methods of brain tanning. All he needs is an opportunity to turn those skills into a business.
Black powder rendezvous, they called them. They were recreations of the old fur trade days in the Rocky Mountains when all the trappers would meet in one spot.
This modern-day mountain man gathering is the market he's been looking for. A community of enthusiasts who buy and trade in 19th century firearms and buckskins.
The most prestigious clothing that you could wear at one of these rendezvous is brand tan buckskin clothing.
We set our stuff up, and boy, the people, they did come. And they started handling those hides and buying those hides, and we were like, all right, we're in, you know?
Once we learned that and found where a market was, well, we did as many as 100 deer skins in a year's time. Worth lots of money. Lots of money.
Well, that was all it took for Tom Moore to live in a teepee, dressed in his buckskins, camping. Hoo-hoo, he was hooked. He's got a sign out in the shop that says, "He is free who lives as he chooses." And that's pretty much how he's been.
After quitting the rodeo at age 41, Tom heads for the mountains and never looks back.
All right, there's another one done. An amazing life. I've enjoyed every bit of it. And as long as I can still do it, hell, I'm gonna do it.
Still got a lot more to go.
Still got some more to go.
I can't picture myself doing anything else but living in the mountains.